Welcome everybody to Do Space's Lunch and Learn for Monday. My name is Kim. I'm one of the community learning specialists with Do Space, and today I am presenting Dr. Tom Field. He is part of the Engler Entrepreneurship Program, and we are going to be doing a series with the Engler Entrepreneurship Program for the next 5 weeks. It's a 5-part series, and today Dr. Field is going to be presenting part 1, and so I am going to let him do his intro and let him get started. Take it away, Dr. Field.
All right, thanks everybody. Well, I hope everybody's staying warm and safe and enjoying the fact that apparently summer is over, with a little return maybe to spring or fall here starting tomorrow. Look, I always want to be like crystal clear with people, and I know your time is super valuable, and you may say, look, man, just give me 4 things I can take home right now. I've got a better gig than hanging out with you. So let me just, before I even say one more thing, I'm going to give you 4 recommendations, 4 books that I think would be valuable for you to think about as you're considering your mindset as an entrepreneur. The first one is called The Dip by Seth Godin. You'll find it absolutely fascinating. It's wonderful because it's short, super powerful, and it's one of the most important books I think you can possibly read. So Seth Godin, The Dip. Stephen Pressfield, Do the Work, right? This is a powerful one, and we're going to talk a little bit about Pressfield's thinking as we go through our webinar today, but I think you'd find this one good. Also, short read, right? So for those of you who don't love to read, it's a great one. Another great book is Pound the Stone by Josh Medcalf. It's just a fantastic sort of fable approach to taking a look at what it takes to actually pound the stone, to beat away day after day after day in the space of entrepreneurship. And then the final thing, which I think everybody would find super valuable, is if you just want like a great story to introduce you to the world of entrepreneurship and kind of get a sense of what would it be like to go down this path. Diane Kander's book, All in Startup, absolutely fabulous. You can find all these either as audibles or you can find used copies super cheap on the web. Certainly most libraries will be carrying those. So I hope you'll find those and find those to be valuable to you. So let me give you just a very fast background on me. I'm the director of the Engler Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Program at the University of Nebraska. And let me explain that we embrace entrepreneurs from across campus and across the spectrum. Our whole thing, everything about us is driven by this concept. We empower our people on the courageous pursuit of their purpose through the art and practice of entrepreneurship. We are very much an organization that believes that the courageous pursuit of purpose is really where entrepreneurship becomes most valuable. So I'm going to share my screen here real quick, and we're going to get into the meat of things, just so that we can get rolling. Let me get the slideshow started here. And here we go. So the thing I want to have you really consider is, as you're thinking about this, is recognize that I do not have a recipe for you. The entrepreneurial mindset comes in all kinds of forms and shapes and sizes, and it does not care. Entrepreneurship does not care who you are. It does not care about your background. It does not care about your age, your gender. It doesn't care about anything except, are you interested in taking on the status quo? And that's what's so awesome about this particular realm of life, is that it gives you a very different approach. Now, if you have any questions, if we can be of service to you, I want to give you my email, which is tfield2@unl.edu. tfield2@unl.edu, and you can also learn more about us. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, etc., but also our website, engler.unl.edu. Okay, I'm done promoting. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about today, and that is the entrepreneurial mindset. And this material comes from 2 courses I teach. One, which is purpose-driven entrepreneurship, the what we call the Engler mindset. a unique approach to entrepreneurship, and then another course that we teach called Roadmap, Discovering Your Entrepreneurial Pathways. And all of this is designed to help you think about, how do I set my brain for the challenges of entrepreneurship? There are those who believe that you cannot teach entrepreneurship, that either you have it or you don't, sort of like either you are tall or you're not, or either, you are able to hit the 3-point shot or you're not. And I don't buy that. I think entrepreneurship is pretty well embedded in a lot of people's DNA. It can take a ton of different forms. And certainly there's a difference between the founder and the support team in entrepreneurship. But I truly believe we can nurture entrepreneurship, and I think we can test, explore, and prototype it like crazy. So even if you think to yourself, geez, I may not be the next, whoever, right? Whoever the heroes are out in the world of entrepreneurship today, don't worry about that. Think about, what are some of the things that we need to learn to be able to be good at this? And here's the first thing. If you're curious, you've got the lead. This is all about curiosity, the capacity to take not only just an idea, but an idea and explode it into a lot of different formats, color it in Technicolor, and think long and hard about different ways to change an existing situation, to change the status quo, to solve a problem, to serve a person. Will Smith, one of my favorite actors of all time, I just love his thinking, and he does just a great job of thinking about entrepreneurship when he says, I think there's a certain delusional quality that all successful people have to have, a belief that something different than what has happened for the past hundreds of years can happen. Being realistic is the most commonly traveled path to mediocrity. So with that curiosity, the entrepreneur also has this ability to say, look, I think things could be different, right? Airbnb looked at the world and they said, well, what would happen if people stayed with people and they got a more cultural experience? And it was not only good for the guest who wants to pay a little less than for a hotel, and for the host who's going to get paid a little bit for providing this sort of value, right? It was an unrealistic way to see the world, and yet it turned out to really work. Now, I'm a big fan of this particular movie, Captain Jack Sparrow and the Black Pearl. I just love it, and I love this quote. The problem is not the problem. The problem is your attitude about the problem. Do you understand? And here's a fundamental difference between an entrepreneur and maybe somebody who just doesn't ever really cultivate or nurture their entrepreneurial spirit. The entrepreneur says, look, there's a problem. I'm going to get the right attitude. I'm going to figure out how we solve this problem. We're going to pivot our way through this thing, but we're going to solve it. Whereas perhaps the person who doesn't nurture that entrepreneurial spirit just gets log jammed by the problem. So I believe attitude is absolutely critical. And we've worked over the course of the last decade with a huge number of students, with people out in the community. And the difference is, at the end of the day, is attitude. And so we're going to talk a lot about that as we go through the day. So some key points. Number one, for the entrepreneurial mindset to actually work, you have to be willing to say, I am going to change the script. And when we talk about the script, we're not talking about the world, we're talking about ourselves. I'm going to change the script. I'm going to take authorship of the story, and I'm going to go at this in a very unique way. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, wait a minute, hold on. I don't know about that. That seems pretty daunting. It does. And yet, if you look at every successful entrepreneur in history, they reached a point where they got past the wide-eyed notion of how scary this next thing might be and said, I'm willing to change the script because I've got to get to a new story. And the story has to be yours. That's why we're so focused in our program on purpose and on the individual. We meet people where they are, at the stage they're at, recognizing that there's lots of ways up the mountain. If you've ever been to a climbing wall, you know there are a lot of different ways to get to the top. So the first thing to do is to spend a lot of time, if you're really thinking about, geez, I think I want to do this entrepreneurial thing, but I'm not sure. It's a time for a lot of reflection and writing and thinking on the front end. But ultimately, we're going to have to get to what we call the start. But job one, take control of the script. Why? Because if you don't take control of the script, ultimately you will, and there's nothing wrong with this approach. I'm not critiquing anyone who chooses OPP, but you have to make the choice. Am I going to live for my purpose and utilizing the skills and talents, the capacity that I've been given to make a difference in the world, or am I going to leverage my skills for other people's purpose? Jim Rome, a famous business person, once said, look, you know, you can leave it up to somebody else, but do you know how much they've got planned for you? Not much. And I've bought that. I buy that story. I think living on somebody else's purpose, certainly we can create some value doing that, but we will always be out of the captain's seat if we choose that path. So I think it comes down to two choices. The entrepreneurial path, which is figure out my intent, take action, generate results, and move myself forward, right? My intent is going to influence my action. Those actions and intent are going to influence the results I create, but I'm going to be the owner of those. Or, you know, that one where it's like at age 70 or 80, right? Or 90, whenever we hit, you know, sort of the retirement age, whenever that is, and we go, oh man, I just blew it. I spent all my time on the wrong thing, right? I think this is super important. So an entrepreneur is very, very much an intentional choice and a path. And it starts with this. And this is really about the script. You decide that you're not going to stay where you are. And you simply say, look, here's where I am, but this is not what I'm going to do for the future. I'm going to walk away from this place. I'm going to sail away from where I am today, with all the uncertainty and the challenge that is most certain to come. But I'm going to sail away because I don't want to stay where I am at. The status quo is not fathomable to me. So I think this is a really critical piece of the whole puzzle, is to think your way through that very strong process. The second step, after you decide, okay, I'm going to take control of the script. I'm going to write my story here. The second thing is okay, why am I going to do this? And this is important. And I have no pre-described notion about what your why should be. This belongs to you and to you alone. No one else can decide this for you. The entrepreneur ultimately never, ever waits for permission. They never expect permission. They never expect to be nurtured into it. They simply say, I'm going to take control of the script, and here's why. This why matters so much, right? You've probably read some things in that space where, you know, Simon Sinek and others talk a lot about finding your why. The value of this is it creates an opportunity for you to say, the motivation behind the choices I'm going to make is so strong that I will accept the barriers, the challenges, and the hard work that is most certain to come with it. And this means two things, in my opinion. The entrepreneur brings both their head and their heart to the game. They don't overplay one. They don't underplay the other. They bring both. If you leave your heart behind completely, I don't think it's possible to sustain the effort to actually grow the company. But if you lead only with your heart, leaving your head completely out of it, you're going to make some really crazy decisions. And so do you have the capacity to bring head and heart to the table? And there's probably a third one, and that's your gut, that sort of visceral instinct and that capacity to trust your gut. And when we really look at people's success over time, they're very good at sorting that out. So what's up here? what's in here, and then what's in that gut. Ultimately, it will be a struggle. And I don't want to turn entrepreneurship into this shiny little cool, item, something to sort of dangle off the Christmas tree, if you will, and it sparkles and is cool. Entrepreneurship is gritty, tough, dirt under the fingernails, scrapes on the elbow, scrapes on the knees, being told no a lot, and getting on to the next thing, right? It's a battle. So you got to be prepared for that. It is a working gloves kind of approach. There are those who sort of want to play with being an entrepreneur and those who actually want to do it. Just understand there's going to be some sweat and some blood and some tears, and some highs and some lows, right? It's not a straight line. It's a challenge, but you got to be willing to take on that fight. Also, as you're thinking about your why, ultimately there's risk involved. And in truth, entrepreneurs do not take crazy risk. They take calculated, smart, thoughtful risk, but ultimately they take risk. And that's something each of us has to sort of ascertain ourselves, right? I can't tell you, I can't make you less risk averse, right? Our own, this voice up in here, the experiences we've had in our past, sort of our own sense of personal safety and comfort are going to come to play here. And so the founder has to be someone who's really got maybe a little more risk tolerance. But then that founder may well surround themselves with other like-minded entrepreneurial folks who are maybe just a little less risk tolerant. And so you've got to lay this out in the whole world of entrepreneurship. There's multiple roles, and not everybody has to be a founder. And certainly co-founders, even tri-founders, can build great companies when they merge these varying levels of confidence around risk. But it's something you've got to understand, and you've got to, not only do you need to understand it, you need to understand it in the context of your social circle, your family circle, etc., so that you make sure that in fact you're ready for the rigors that entrepreneurship is sure to bring. Ultimately, it comes down to this: can you start, right? Yeah, it's super exciting to think about finishing the race, right, and winning at the end, and it's, man, that's exciting to think about. But you don't win that race unless you start, right? It comes down to the start. And I'm a big fan of getting going. You cannot plan your way into a perfect start. No entrepreneurial venture has ever been without its pivots, without its setbacks, without its challenges. And so as you think about this, right, just go start. And you don't have to start great big. Prototype, test, practice, experience. It's why the side gig and the side hustle makes so much sense for people, is it gives you a chance to actually give it a test. But if you spend all of your time standing on that on the one side of the line waiting to start, you're never going to win the game. You can't win the race because you aren't even in the game. Think about that sideline, right? And most of us at some level or another have played some kind of competitive sport, or we've participated in some kind of competition, or we've been in a performance, either musically or theater or art, or any place where we put ourselves kind of out on the field for both the possibility of success and the possibility of failure, right? Because as long as you're on the sidelines, you can sort of live with, hey, I have potential, but I haven't had to prove it yet. It's a pretty safe place, right? It's the old, lots of armchair quarterbacks on Monday morning. The key is, are you willing to step across that line? And this is a big question. And it's also okay to recognize that sometimes you have to play a second game, sometimes a third game, sometimes a fourth game, right? You don't win every game, but you learn as you go. It's critical. So what are the rules? What are the rules that an entrepreneur has to think their way through? Well, first and foremost, it's this, and this is absolutely critical. I do not care what your business is. Do not care. It is a people first game. I've followed a guy named Tom Peters for most of my business career. One of the great thinkers in the world of business and enterprise, and this has been the hallmark since he first wrote that great book, Search for Excellence, way back when, geez, back in the 80s. Sorry, I just gave away my age. But people first, right? And I get a feed from him every week, and this was this morning's, right? I thought it was, how cool is it that this would be the feed this morning? An organization, no matter how technologically transformed, is at the end of the day no more, no less than people serving people. Doesn't matter how high tech your business is, doesn't matter how low tech, it doesn't matter whether you hire 1 or 1,000, it's people serving people. And if you're going to be the leader, your job is serve the people who serve the people. And as Peters concludes, one last thing, the people we serve are our customers and, big emphasis on and, our communities. That's why I'm so enthralled with entrepreneurship, because I believe great entrepreneurship is how we best serve others, serve our communities, and build the kind of place we want to live, work, and play. And I think entrepreneurship has that very, very powerful dimension to it. Certainly difficult, certainly challenging, but it has a chance to have a massive impact, right? So it comes down to the people, and I don't care, what your team looks like, right? Whether you're a young hip team or you're a team of experienced folks saying, hey, let's go make something happen here. At the end of the day, the rule that any of those teams is going to face is, I've got to find a problem worth solving for people who will care about me solving that problem. Now, even in a nonprofit space, there has to be some kind of financial reward that comes as a result of solving the problem, that attracts capital, that attracts resources. So in both the for-profit and nonprofit space, money matters, right? And we just have to come to grips with that. Now, I happen to believe money is a tool, not an outcome, but money matters. But the only way I'm going to be able to capitalize and cash flow and ultimately create a wealth creating kind of business is to solve the right problem for the right people. And we've got to be crystal clear about problems and customers. Too often entrepreneurs get an idea, like, I'm going to solve it this way, right? And then we go just hell bent for leather to solve it. And then we get out to the marketplace, and the market's like, no, right? Cool, but I'm not interested. The problem is we forget to ask the customer. If you're in the tech space, here's my advice. Until you understand the problem and the customer with crystal clarity, do not write one line of code. Do not spend any time writing code until you know the problem and the customer exceedingly well, right? And that means testing all of your assumptions about that problem, all of your assumptions about those customers, right? Because customers don't buy products, folks. What they want is they want solutions. Give me a solution, right? I don't want a hole in the wall. I want to hang my favorite picture of my favorite cousin, Larry, on the wall. The hole is not the issue. I don't even want the hanger. I just want the picture hanging on the wall. That's the solution that I'm after. Now, this is perhaps a bit tongue-in-cheek, but not really. If you want an MBA in one slide, here it is. Relevant businesses are created through two things: relationships and processes. That equates to front of house and back of house. If you can be good at front of house and back of house, you will have a relevant business, right? So long as you've got your problem and customer aligned correctly and you understand front of house and back of house operations, you're going to be in business. So what's the front of house? And that's really this people first thing, right? It's communication, sales, customer discovery and feedback, relationships, service, right? And how many of us have purchased expensive things, whether it's software, whether it's a physical product, whether it's a service, and then, in fact, the backside support for it just isn't there. When we run into problems, there's no one there to actually solve it, right? That's a front of house problem. And too often we get so caught up in making the watch that we forget about the front of house side of things. We can also, though, get so caught up in front of house, we forget about the processes that are absolutely critical to run this business, to create momentum, to create operational systems that actually function and that help people be successful. So that leads us to process. Right now, I am an active, so if you look at my Gallup strengths, right, strategic, futuristic, learner, activator, and then responsibility, right, only because I'm the oldest child in my family. So you can imagine how crazy my team is because I am an idea person, right? Process for me is like the least of my strengths. So it's why my team is really, really good at process. So understand, you don't have to be great at all of these things. You do, though, have to understand the value and build teams that can do it. So in that process, number one, entrepreneurs do not predict the future, right? If we think that we're just going to, you remember the old Johnny Carson, you guys are all too young probably, but Johnny Carson used to hold up, he'd do this skit where he held up this little card to his forehead and he would have some response to what the question was. It was always funny, but it was like this fortune telling thing. We can't be in the game of fortune telling. It's too risky. The success rate is too low. What we actually have to do is be more like Sherlock Holmes. Study, explore, infer, understand, question the assumptions, really rethink the data over and over again to really understand the problem and the customer. That is process one, right? It is the most critical process. And so it's one that we have to sort of stifle our own inner creativity in the short run to not try to put a solution out until we know that we're actually got a problem that people are willing to pay us to fix in the way that they want it fixed, right? So lead with the problem, lead with the customer. Now, solutions. Yeah, it's cool. Everybody, our first baby, we have this saying around here, don't fall in love with your first baby. And we say that perfectly tongue in cheek. Of course, if you have a real baby, we want you to fall in love with that baby. But when it's a solution for your company, man, don't get too enamored with it, because sure as thunder, the market is going to send you information that forces you to pivot, to change. And so another piece of the entrepreneurial mindset is, are you nimble? Do you have the capacity to adapt and change as circumstances change, right? Certainly in the last 8 months, we have had to deal with a tremendous amount of uncertainty and with a tremendous amount of new, shifting, evolving market signals and circumstances. And the companies who have been the best at surviving in this and even thriving are those who have been the most nimble, who have stayed focused on their core and have stayed focused on their customer. Look, one of the keys is can we figure out a way to think about how to give people various things that they might want? Not all carrots have to be orange. But to get to that, we need to understand. We need to have a process in place before we actually get to that. Our process should also have us thinking all the time about simplicity as opposed to complexity. I abhor complexity. Complexity just creates problem after problem. It's certainly exciting to watch this big piece of mining equipment coming down this highway, two semis side by side. And, there's a dark part of me that's like, ooh, I hope there's a really hairpin turn next. And what will happen if they go too fast? And that's the dark side of me coming out. But that's risky business, right? Picture A, there's a lot on the line there, and it is a complex approach. B, on the other hand, the paperclip, right? In the world of high tech, we still have paperclips, right? It's a simple, predictable, valuable solution. And so one of the key things for the entrepreneur is keep it as simple as possible, no simpler. I understand that, and I understand the complexity that's out there. But your customer interface, your processes for your team need to be simple enough that they don't drive people moonbat crazy. So what do back of house processes look like? It's analytical capacity. it's logistics, it's operational excellence, it's decision support, it's forecasting, all those things. And so as you're thinking about this, you also want to be thinking, geez, wow, as a founder, how do I do all of these things well? Well, early on, you're going to have to figure it out. An early stage company, you're young, you don't have any resources. And when I say young, I don't mean that's not an age thing. It's you're young in the market, you're young in the experience. And you don't know. So you're just figuring it out, right? You are literally, you're solving that problem. Like you're exploring your way through it like day by day. But over time, you figure out what you can be good at and you be good at that. And ultimately, you will have to get expertise in these spaces. Now, where you're weak, here's the great news about the Midwest, about Nebraska in particular, people will help you. There are so many people. I'm just so excited about the folks at Do Space and what they're providing and all the various places where people will come to help you. That matters. And don't be afraid to ask for the help, right? We do not have the capacity to have all the answers, to have all the skill sets. So be willing to ask for help. The entrepreneurial mindset is not one that is so proud that it ignores help or that it refuses to recognize and admit that it doesn't know, right? This is critical and this is hard for people. And the older you are, the harder it is to ask for help. And if you are a male of my generation, you just have to get over it, guys. We have to ask for help and input. It makes us better. And the good news is there's really, really smart, talented women out there who will help us if we'll just pay attention. So what are the barriers, right? So this is some of Steve Pressfield's work, and this is really important, right? Because you're going to have barriers in your head, right? Sometimes there are external barriers, but most of the barriers that we see really stopping people are not externalities. They tend to be things coming internally. And these come in the force of resistance, right? And resistance, as Pressfield describes it, is self-doubt, fear, procrastination, addiction, ego, perfectionism. And man, letting go of perfect, super important. Because go back and find the very earliest image you can of Facebook's first page. Not good, right? But they learned as they went and they grew and they grew and they grew. Look at any craftsman's first, whatever it is they're making, right? Whether it's high-end furniture and their first attempt at that, or whether it's their first coding project, whatever. Early on, our first stuff is not very good. So we just have to get past it and fall in love with the notion that the next iteration might actually be the one. And the one after that might actually be the one. And the one after that one might be the one. That's how we get past resistance. And then rational thought. And this is, let me tell you, you want to find the enemy of entrepreneurship, go to any large public institution of higher education, right? It's all about rationality and about process and very structured experimentation. That's not entrepreneurship, right? We get comfortable. We get into that groupthink approach. We let go of our autonomy. That rational thought can get in our way. Now we have to be thoughtful. We have to be intentional, but we cannot get ourselves to 100% certainty before launching. And then finally, friends and family, right? Now, friends and family are also your best ally, but friends and family can get in our way. Why? Because they either want to keep us the same, keep us safe, or keep us within reach. And it's all out of love. But every entrepreneur I know eventually has to get past some sort of resistance coming from friends and family who are more or less saying to them, is that safe? Should you do that? Isn't that too scary? Isn't it too hard? Whatever, and to get past that. So understand there's going to be resistance no matter what you do. Pressfield says, look, anytime we undertake something noble, if it rejects immediate gratification in favor of long-term growth, health, or integrity, resistance is going to show up. If there's not resistance, you're not working on a big enough thing. Resistance shows up when we're working on something noble. That always happens, right? And I think it's the great sign that, in fact, we're onto something important. Now, you're going to face jerks, whiners, doubters, negative influences, right? As an entrepreneur, not every day is going to be a good And you've got to develop a sort of resilience. You need to have a community of folks who are going to stick with you and stand with you and be in a place to be super supportive of you as you're growing. But you're going to have to just accept on the front end, you're going to encounter some folks who are not on your side. That's okay, right? Ultimately, those critics, those competitors will make you better. And remember to separate yourself from the result, right? You're going to get knocked down. You're going to get your nose bloodied. You're going to get a black eye or two. You're going to mess some stuff up. It's okay, right? The key is to learn and move forward. We have a saying about failure around here. Fail forward, fail fast, fail cheap, learn like crazy. Fail forward, fail fast, fail cheap, learn like crazy, because failure is the root of all good learning. The key is to fail with small increments of capital before you get big increments, because the $1 million failure we'd like to avoid. The $1,000 failure, we can recover from that one. So let me start to wrap this up, because I want to take questions from folks. I think that'll be a lot more interesting for you. I just love this quote from E.O. Wilson. You are capable of more than you know. I just want that to sink in for a minute. You're capable of more than you know. Find the thing that's right for you. You know, and nobody can find that for you, right? I can't tell you. And we have entrepreneurs in our program that are everything from high tech to low tech, from things as crazy as the porta potty business to high-end coding to robotics to really cool services to online boutiques to you name it, right? To truck reselling businesses, all kinds of things. Figure out what's right for you and recognize that passion is not really a feeling. Passion is a decision. You're going to bring your best to the best opportunity at hand. Strive to be the best at whatever it is you choose, however difficult that is. Aim high, says Wilson. Behave honorably. And goodness knows, if ever in history we need more honorable behavior, now is it. And we need, as entrepreneurs and business people, it's what we've got to bring to the table. Prepare to be alone at times. Entrepreneurship can be lonely. You need cheerleaders, critics, and friends. You need those who will be the doubting Thomas in your inner circle, if you will. You also need that person who, when it's tough, says, hey, let's go have coffee and you just talk to me and I'm going to sit here and listen, because it can be lonely. You will have some moments where it looks like a lost cause. It's part of the gig. But golly, if you've parented, you've experienced this. I have 5 kids. I guarantee you there's entrepreneurship and parenting have a lot of things in common, right? There's no certainty, like the conditions are always changing. The customers are always like changing their minds and growing, and the market changes on us, right? And we don't always make the right choices, but we persist. Right. And I love this ending line from Wilson. The world needs all you can give. And I just think entrepreneurship is such a beautiful way to make a difference in the world. It's just so powerful. So I'm going to wrap up with this, like, find the ball you want to chase and then get focused on it. Chase it with absolute vigor, intensity, intentionality. You know, if you get caught up in every shiny object, you'll just sort of be in this cul-de-sac. It'll be like being caught in the roundabout, right? You're just going in circles and you're certainly turning your wheels, but you're not making any progress. Focus is the critical piece. And when in fact you figure out that what you're focused on is not going to work, then you focus on the next thing, right? That's why the solution image I showed you was an A, B, C, D, and quite frankly, it might be E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, right? You have to be willing to do that. So let's stop there and let's go to some questions that people have. Kim, if you wanna kind of guide us through the Q&A, I'd love that, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I would just encourage you, man, if your soul is kind of speaking, you say, man, let's go try this, go for it. The one thing I will tell you is go for it, because now is the time. There's never going to be a better time than right now. Okay, Kim, what questions do you have?
Hi, yes, awesome. Thank you, Dr. Field. Right now we don't have any questions, but if people have any, this is a great time to put them in. You can either put them in the chat or the Q&A, either one. So if you have any questions, maybe take a moment to ask Dr. Field while we have him.
And to
We'll
give
maybe
you
give it a little bit.
as people are thinking about that, let me let you know too, as we go through this several week session together, you'll be meeting different people from my team, and we'll be having at least 2 panels where we're going to bring together both a more experienced set of entrepreneurs and a collegiate set of entrepreneurs who will share their entrepreneurial stories and journey with you that I think you're going to find really, really valuable. Because at the end of the day, having some other stories we can hear about entrepreneurship and seeing someone's journey is what really oftentimes inspired us to move forward.
Awesome.
Like
okay. Yeah, we got a couple questions coming in. Diane asks, how do you find if the problem is out there researching people?
Okay. So, how do you find a problem? So here's the approach we use. We look at problem finding as simply as finding pain. And that sounds really, really sort of dark. But what are things that are painful? Because people, if it's just a mild irritant, you know what? People may not pay you to solve that one. But real pain points, and they don't have to be sexy. I can't find my keys every morning, right? I can't work my way. I can't work my way through some minor tech issue. I can't get somebody to come pick me up with a taxi, right? The Uber folks, right? A very cool solution. So what you do is you find a pain point, and then what you do is you start then finding out who has that pain point, and you ask people, is this a pain point for you? Do you want it solved? And this is called customer discovery, and it's lots and lots and lots of Q&A with folks without bringing any biased solution to the market until you've talked to lots of customers with the problem. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to go in and say, hey, here's my solution. What do you think? Because you're going to miss. What you want to do is go in and, is this a problem for you? No, I can't find my keys. Yes. How often is it a problem for you? Well, as it turns out, every morning. How do you currently solve that problem, right? How have you seen others solve that problem? How much aggravation does this cost you? Does this cost you time and money? And you just keep, right, and it's sort of the 7-question thing. You just keep digging and digging and digging to find out how big the problem is for somebody. And again, this means putting our own solution on the sideline until we can really understand that customer and the problem they're having.
Excellent. Okay, we have a question from Samantha. How would one determine opening a business in one city versus another, assessing the risk as well as if the business would be more fruitful in one community versus another?
Again, I think it's customer discovery, but it's also really taking a look at the ecosystem and saying, okay, so let me just take something really simple, and certainly if you want to give me a sort of a broad understanding of the particular company, we could do it that way. Let me just take something simple, right? Let's say that I want to do a this is crazy, but I'll just for fun, let's say it's Monday, right? I want to do a cupcake and vodka bar, right? Okay. I don't know why I'd want to do that, but let's just assume that I do. And so I'm looking at 2 markets, and what I want to find out is one, do I have market uptake that's greater in one community than the other for a cupcake with a vodka drink, right? And if I'm in a community where 90% of the people want cupcakes and only 5% want the vodka and 5 don't even care, then it's probably not going to work. If I'm in a community though where they value social drinking and social deserting simultaneously, right, then I've got a little opportunity. The second piece you look at is what is the regulatory environment like in those two communities? Because the reality is you're going to, no matter what your company is, sooner or later, you are going to bump into some regulation that somebody once upon a time thought was just a hell of a good idea that's in your way. And so you try to work your way through that piece. The third thing is how dependent are you going to be on employees? Understanding a little bit about what is the employee availability, what's the work ethic, what's the culture like relative to potential employees in these various communities. Fourth, what are the resources that will support you? Certainly there oftentimes are community, state kinds of resources that might be prototyping grants. There may be a really good economic development effort in one city and not so much in another. And then I think there's also just sort of cultural differences in this season. When I talk about culture, I'm just talking about attitudinal culture. There are places we can go, right, where businesses are thriving and we can't quite figure it out. And with complete love in my heart, let me just give you two examples, right? I'm a Coloradan by birth. So you've got, why is Palisade, Colorado done really, really well? And, why maybe has Paonia not done quite as well? Well, it's part of just the difference in the way that they look at business and the way that they look at new talent, new people, new ideas. So I think you've got to weigh all that out. So you're sort of weighing out an economic comparison, you're weighing out a market comparison, you're weighing out an ecosystem comparison, a cultural comparison, and then you're also weighing out the regulatory environment just to determine which of those gives you the best chance for success. And ultimately, it's going to come down also to where can you thrive best as the founder in that city. Because if you put yourself in a place where you're just going to be miserable, no matter how good the market opportunity is, you're not likely going to succeed.
Excellent. Okay, we have another one. Which techniques would you recommend for entrepreneurship within a larger organization? Is there a management or organizational structure that better cultivates entrepreneurship within an organization?
Wow, that's a great question. And it is a complete cultural question for companies. There's a whole series of works out there that are on innovation. Anything you can read by a guy named Guy Kawasaki is absolutely brilliant in this space. I think he's one of the really good thinkers in that realm. And so innovation, it comes down to this. Innovation will be cultivated in a company that's okay with people failing with good intent, right? If a company is absolutely failure adverse, they are not going to be an innovative company. They may be a market leader in a very established channel, but they are not going to be an innovator. Why? Because they simply, pardon the words, but they just, if you mess up, they just punch you in the nose and they beat you into submission, right? Because you're pretty soon you're like, okay, I'm going with the standard approach because I don't want to take another, headshot here. So I think it comes down to that culture of that company. And it's also, entrepreneurship can be cultivated inside of very large organizations by having a team with the right attitude. That we used to call them skunk works. They were sort of innovation groups that literally said, look, we're just going to go figure it out. There's even a story, and I've never checked this one out, but there's an old story from the 80s about an engineering group at GE that they wanted to get in the electric locomotive business. And so they just went out and bought one. They bought a company. The head shed at GE never knew about it. They bought this small little company so they could prototype and learn all about electric locomotives. That's a pretty extreme example, but clearly they were supportive of that. IBM in the early days, there's a great story about young engineer who made a pretty big mistake. It was along the order of a several $100,000 mistake. Went in to turn in his resignation, and Tom Watson said, no. I just invested $500,000 in your education. Go back to work. Right? That's an innovative company. So I think it comes down to attitude in an ecosystem, and it comes down to, frankly, this is my bias is going to come out here a little bit, so just recognize this, and a couple dollars will get you a cup of coffee somewhere. I happen to believe that privately held companies are more innovative than publicly held companies, because privately held companies are not beholden to the quarterly report. I think any organization beholden to the quarterly report has a harder time doing innovation at a really high scale, and they tend to be more risk averse as a result of that.
Great. I'm going to kind of combine two questions because I think they're kind of related. Do you work one-on-one with startup entrepreneurs regardless of their passion or just specific areas? And do the rules change for novelty items?
Oh, great question. Yeah. So we work with all kinds of folks, right, at a variety of stages of their business. So we've got, I mean, we work with everything from people who are in the fashion space, online boutiques, fragrances, all kinds of things, right, in that space, which I know personally nothing about that market, but we can help coach people through and get them connected to certain things, all the way out to things in the food space, to things in the software development space. I mean, just the full spectrum. We've interacted with all kinds of folks. And I think if you're, as an entrepreneur, you want a network and you want a cohort group of people who work in a lot of different avenues, because the more diversity you have in that room, from market perspective, market challenge, the market channel they're in, the challenges they're facing, it just helps you learn at speed. So I'm a big fan of really diverse cohorts who are working on really unique, maybe even seemingly completely unrelated approaches, because what happens is you bring really cool perspective to one another, and there's super value in that. And then the second part of that question, remind me again, Kim, what was the second part of that question?
Do the rules change for novelty items?
That's a good question. And so I'm assuming that I know what a novelty space would be. So oftentimes in the novelty space, we've got to move faster because there's a window of opportunity, right? So, you're the day before the Super Bowl, right? And do I make Chiefs gear, or do I make the other team's gear, right? And at that point in time, right, you're playing by a little different set of rules, because you're going to bet on an outcome, and maybe you're going to hedge your bet and have both those things available, recognizing you're going to give one set away because nobody's going to buy a Super Bowl champion T-shirt from a team that didn't win. So I think in the novelty space, you maybe take on more risk. You're taking on the opportunity that's more circumstantial, right? There's and I think when that's the case, you probably take on more risk. You execute against what you believe to be true. But it's not a space that I'm real comfortable with, because for me it's almost too uncertain.
Okay. I have my business ready to start, things are in place, and I've held off starting my outreach when COVID hit. So I've been on hold this year. How do I start my approach during this time of uncertainty?
So here's the approach that I would take. And again, like there are some ideas that are so dependent on, the fact that people are not social distancing, right? My cupcake and vodka store, right? I today might not be the time to try to create a retail space, but if I could do a delivery service, I might, make big bank. I think you've got to, take a look and see how, what's the real impact on customer behavior on my business, and can I alter it to where I'm not dependent on face-to-face full table sets in a restaurant or whatever. But then I think you say to yourself, okay, let's get really honest about things. And we are going to, by hook or crook, what's going to happen is we are going to get past this. Right? I mean, I have a PhD in statistical analysis. We're going to get past this. I can't give you a date. I can't explain that. But I don't know any more than anybody else, but I know we're going to get past it. So the one thing you can do in uncertainty is prototype, pop up shop your way kind of into studying things out. Find small ways to test markets, to see how things go. But I'm still, even in times of uncertainty, now is the time to start, because your competitors, the reality is a lot of people are going to sit on the sidelines because they're afraid and because they're uncertain and because they don't know what to do next. And I think those who are starting to act today, certainly with responsibility, certainly with integrity, certainly with intent, but action trumps inaction always. Never in history over the long term has inaction trumped action. So I'm a big believer in start making things happen, manage your risk, manage your investment, but start the wheel rolling so that you have a lead when the gates open up, and they will.
Awesome. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. How would you advise an aspiring entrepreneur who is juggling a degree, a child, job search, and planning to start a business? How would you prioritize those things so they can actually start? And should one even start one before things are more stable?
Well, number one, I'm with you. I just so you know, I have 5 children, and because God has a great sense of humor, I have a grown son who's 29. I have twins who are 27, and I have 8-year-old twins as well. So I'm with you. I caffeine. Here's the thing. I'm a big fan. You've got to be, I understand, right? We have to be responsible. We got to be thoughtful, and we don't want to put families at risk, and absolutely we've got to just know ourselves in that space. But in as much as is possible, so there are a couple of things I heard, chasing the degree, right? A couple things in a degree. If you're doing an undergraduate and you're not going to do a master's or PhD after that, look, nobody is going to get terribly upset if your GPA is a couple of decimal points lower because you just got the degree finished. Even if you're in graduate school, the best advice I ever got was anything over the lowest B possible is wasted effort. It was the best advice I ever got in graduate school. So I think you de-risk your, right? You think about, okay, I'm going to get this checked off because it's a safety net, and it may be a personal thing you want to get done. Also recognize you can always go back and get a degree later. I'm also a big fan of bringing your family into the business if it's a business that can handle that. One of the great companies of Nebraska that was started in Nebraska ultimately was sold, but they were a design studio, and their very early days, they were going sort of trade show to trade show, and there's all these great pictures of their kids sleeping in these boxes of t-shirts when they were little kids. And then they grew up in the business, which eventually they had some really remarkable success, became the designer for everything that Harley Davidson was selling in the way of t-shirts, etc. So bring your family into the thing. And in as much as possible, include more senior family members who might be able to help with childcare, etc. I'm one of those people though. I'm an activator. I believe that we can make things happen. I'm a big fan. The voice in my head when things get tough is I'm like, okay, not that many years ago, there was a family got on a boat in Ireland and they had nothing. They either got on the boat or they died. And they came here, they were illiterate, they were poor, they had nothing. And I just think to myself, okay, what would that great grandmother, what would she have done? And when I channel my inner immigrant, tell you what, it's the most powerful thing in the world, because all of a sudden a lot of things that seem like they can't be done can be done, because we look back and we go, if they did it, I can do it.
That's excellent advice. Awesome. Well, Dr. Field, thank you so much for all of your great answers. Would you, because we do have a few more questions that we're not going to be able to get to, can you repeat your email so maybe they can
You
email
bet.
you?
So feel free to email me at tfield, TFIELD, number 2, so tfield2 at unl.edu, and I'd be more than happy to get a response back to folks. There you go. Perfect. That's it.
Excellent. Well, perfect. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today for our first part of our series. Thank you, Dr. Field, and make sure to tune in next Monday for 1 o'clock for the second part of our series with Engler Enterprise Program. So, everybody, have a great day. And again, this was recorded. So, if you are wanting to kind of review what Dr. Field said, it should be up on our Do Space YouTube page within the week. So it's usually up by the weekend, by Monday. So yeah, so thank you so much. And I hope everybody has a great week. And thank you, Dr. Field.
Thanks, everybody. Go make something happen.